Hello, welcome back to this class of thermal analysis where we are talking about the corresponding titrations, because we all know the simple titrations where some acid is utilized with that of our base and we go for the corresponding neutralization reaction, and how we can monitor thermally this particular titration. So, we will just simply put something which is the thermal term. So, it will be thermometric titrations. So, in that thermometric titrations, what we can measure now, because in the normal titrations of all these things we use indicator, and the color change of that indicator will tell you that all the acids has been consumed by the base and the product is only water as well as the salt. So, we can detect the end point by knowing the corresponding color change for the indicator added to that reaction. But in this case we go for thermal measurements. So, thermal measurements we will do. Why we do that thermal measurements? Because to locate this particular end point. So, this is the end point. So, to locate the end point of some titrations which can be detected nicely. So, for some titrations we can go for. So, what we can do there, that this we all know that we can have some analyte and the titrant. So, temperature. So, again a calorimeter type of arrangement we can have. So, the temperature of the titrant, remember it nicely that what we are monitoring, the temperature of the titrant can be monitored or is recorded as a function of titrant volume. So, what we all know that we just go for this addition or this particular addition of volume from the burette, and we take something in your conical flask. So, now you can yourself tell that if we can have some arrangement such that we can measure or we can monitor the temperature of the reaction flux or the conical flux, where we add certain reagent or certain acid. So, this titrant we are adding, and this particular volume is giving us to detect the corresponding end point. So, we get some change in that particular temperature. So, at the neutralization point, so there will be some sudden change in that particular temperature change. So, we can monitor these two temperature change. So, one monotonous change, then again certain break, and the slope of this particular straight line beyond the end point will also be changing. So, that way we can locate the corresponding end point by doing the corresponding thermometric titration. So, what we see that so far that the DTG curve we have, then the mass changes in that particular case. Why it goes for the corresponding mass change is that the sample loses some amount of material in one of several different ways, or it reacts with the surrounding atmosphere. So, it loses the mass, as I told you just now, that if you have a calcium carbonate sample or a corresponding magnesium carbonate sample. So, the carbon dioxide elimination or sometime carbon monoxide elimination also can take place. If there is elimination of carbon monoxide, we get the corresponding oxides of the metal ion, or if directly the corresponding CO plus CO2 is removed, what we get? We get the corresponding oxides in one form, but sometimes we directly get that particular one with the intermediate formation, without intermediate formation of the corresponding carbonate species. So, a different effects can cause a sample to lose or even gain mass, and so produce steps in the TGA curve. So, TGA curve, the stepwise change what we see is due to the corresponding loss in the weight, or in opposite direction if we go for that is the corresponding gain in weight. So, how we do all these things? Because a particular sample, so what are the different processes or different pathways basically we go for this material is the evaporation of volatile constituents. So, while we dry basically, and this particular drying process, when we dry the sample of nickel DMG as I told you, or the desorption of some material or adsorption of gases. So, when the adsorption of gases are there will be a gain in weight, or the moisture loss or the moisture gain, and other volatile substances, and loss of water of crystallization. That means, if you have the water of crystallizations, just now I told you that we will consider in some of our classes that very good or the very useful reference material for calcium or any other thermobalance, because how we standardize a thermobalance. So, thermobalance can be standardized by using a corresponding sample of calcium oxalate. It can be monohydrate or dihydrate. So, we should be very much careful about knowing the number of water molecules. So, the number of water molecules which are trapped as water of crystallization or crystallizations. So, these water of crystallizations we can monitor and we can measure the number of water of crystallizations, because we all know that all these samples, because copper sulphate is nothing but is pentahydrate. We all know that sodium carbonate had 10 water of crystallizations when it is freshly prepared, and in some point it is only monohydrate. So, how we can differentiate these two samples, whether it is a decahydrate or a monohydrate, that we can do simply by doing the corresponding analysis, where we measure the temperature change for all these. Then we can have some oxidative decomposition of any organic substance in air or oxygen. That means, we are simply burning something. So, we can go for the typical decomposition of organic substance. If the organic substance is a solid one, and in presence of air or some oxygen, means excess oxygen or in pure oxygen, your compound is typically burning, because most of these organic compounds we know they are forming from carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur and all these. So, they will basically give rise to the corresponding water molecules, the carbon dioxides or the nitrogen oxides and all these. Then we can have the thermal decomposition if we go for this in an inert atmosphere with the formation of gaseous product. So, what are the differences between these two? That decomposition of organic substances in air, that means, we are deliberately looking for oxidative decomposition, but in presence of oxygen we are burning the material. But when we put this in inert atmosphere like that of your nitrogen atmosphere or argon atmosphere, because in preference sometime we should take only argon atmosphere in lieu of nitrogen atmosphere, because at temperature which is quite very high, and at that temperature we can have reaction with the nitrogen, because we all know the metal ions can form nitrides, or sometime in presence of more oxygen it can go for the nitrates or nitrites also. So, if the inert atmosphere is maintained by that nitrogen, and if this nitrogen at higher temperature can react with the material, then that particular material is converted by forming the corresponding nitrates or nitrides will gain some weight. But if the inert atmosphere is maintained by argon or any other inert gas, it will not give rise to that sort of reaction, or if we find that there is some gaseous product is eliminating like that of our carbonate material. So, immediately conclude that your sample is having some carbonate salt and that carbonate is giving rise to carbon monoxide as well as carbon dioxide. And one more interesting property of this TGA measurement, because we are talking about all these in relation to the TGA measurement, and we have introduced that we can have the corresponding thermobalance. So, how we can monitor the magnetic properties? So, in relation to these magnetic properties, so just briefly we can see or know the thing that we can have some balance which is known as Gauss balance, which is being utilized for knowing a material whether the material is paramagnetic or not. How it works? Because if the corresponding tube which we put on that balance is paramagnetic and the balance pan basically, or we take the weight. So, we have the pan of this thing. So, where we put the weight, or digitally we can measure the weight, and you have the corresponding tube. So, is the Gauss tube is there. So, is the Gauss tube is basically hanging over here, and we take the weight and the sample is filled with this tube. But if we place this particular one with in some magnet. So, this basically the digital recording of the weight change. So, in absence of magnetic field, the H is the magnetic field. We take the weight of that particular sample, and if the sample is paramagnetic one, this sample is paramagnetic one, and in presence of magnetic field there will be a weight gain. So, we take the corresponding change in the corresponding weight. So, delta W. So, delta W will be therefore the corresponding paramagnetic property of this, and which can be converted to the corresponding chi g value, the gram susceptibility value, and then it can be converted to chi m value and then to mu effective. So, it is nothing but a very simple thing that instead of doing the temperature effect, we measure the thing in presence of a magnet. So, now if we go or if we make this one a typical arrangement where we can also see that temperature effect, that means you have the thermobalance. So, if we have the thermobalance, and in that thermobalance what we see again the corresponding change, that means this delta W with regard to temperature, and here we are talking the delta W versus magnetic field in terms of the magnetic field, because this measurement we are doing at room temperature, but here the temperature is varying. Now, if we mix all these three, that means we bring some thermobalance in a magnetic field. What is the effect? So, different magnetic materials can be characterized in that way, and one such characterization is the ferromagnetic behavior. So, the magnetic properties of some of these materials, what we want to see with the temperature change. So, is the Curie transition, we all know the temperature change, that is why some of these measurements we do at a very low temperature, because the temperature effect is always there on the magnetic samples. So, if the measurement of the weight change is done in an inhomogeneous magnetic field, the change in the magnetic attraction at the transition generates a TGA signal. So, the presence of an inhomogeneous magnetic field can cause the magnetic attraction for the sample which is paramagnetic in nature, or sometimes it can be a ferromagnetic sample also. So, we get a corresponding TGA signal due to that particular effect. So, this thing therefore, we find that this TGA gives all those good information and can provide informations about the physical phenomena or the physical changes. So, what are those physical phenomena, what we can see? Because even if you do not have any chemical change, we can monitor in terms of the corresponding physical characterization. It can be a metallurgical sample, it can be a material sample, it can be any other ore or minerals which can be characterized for their physical characterization, such as you can have a phase transition. So, if you have a second order phase transition which includes vaporization, sublimation, absorption and desorption. So, all these things, that certain material is not decomposing, but it is vaporizing, but it is going for sublimation. We can monitor that particular change by your TGA. Then TGA can also provide information about the chemical phenomena. Chemical phenomena is related to chemisorption, physisorption we all know. So, chemisorptions are there. Then especially desolvation or the dehydration, or we are removing the corresponding water from the solvent of crystallization. So, this can be a chemical phenomenon because the solvent of crystallization is removed, and if the water molecules are trapped within the crystal lattice, what we know that we get the regular crystal, and the crystal form will change if we remove those water of crystallizations. Then the organic compounds, as we know, or inorganic salts can undergo decomposition, and interestingly some solid can go for some solid gas reactions, because we all know that the solids are reacting with some solutions, or it is reacting or solubilizing in water molecule, but directly we see some reaction with the gas molecules. It can go for oxidation or reduction, or you can go for some gas sensing material. So, the gas sensor we can develop if a solid sensor you can have, and that can go for some sensing behavior by trapping the corresponding gas molecules. We can have certain change. So, TGA analysis of that material, whether that material is useful for making a gas sensor, we can analyze for that also. So, altogether if we see that a huge number of applications we can have with this TGA. So, the huge number of application first will come under our mind is the materials characterization. So far we are talking about the corresponding materials. So, any material including your organic sample or organic molecule, inorganic salts, we can characterize very nicely for its thermal stability also. So, it can be characterized for its different decomposition pattern, like that of your calcium oxalate or magnesium oxalate, we will see. Then degradation mechanisms or the reaction kinetics, those are very tricky process, but we can also monitor those, that what sort of degradation mechanism is happening over there, and the reaction kinetics and high temperature reaction kinetics at the same time. And if certain compound has some organic volatile material trapped inside, so the organic content or the organic matter present in some mud or in any other solid material. So, volatile organic matter or volatile organic compound, we call it VOC. So, volatile organic compound can be estimated or calculated by doing this sort of thermogravimetric analysis. Then determination of inorganic content, that if the inorganic content is there, it can be converted to some oxide or ash formation in a sample, that can be analyzed by TGA, and it can also conclude about, or it can predict about the corresponding material structures, because all these things will be related to the material structures. And apart from all this, one useful importance of the TGA is the polymeric material characterization. So, it comes under this material characterization, but it under the polymeric material characterization. So, anything of any sort of this polymer we can characterize, such as thermoplastics, thermostats, thermosetting plastics also, elastomers, composites, plastic films, fibers, coatings, and sometimes even paints also, that how far it is stable or how much it is stable in terms of the corresponding temperature rise. So, what we see that the use of the thermobalance in such a way that we can see the first introduction of that particular thermobalance. What we see for in the example, what we have seen or what we have told you, that is the Kotaro's Honda's thermobalance. It has been introduced, as I told you, in 1915, and the schematic of that thermobalance is not a complicated one. It was his own original drawing which has been given. So, it has also some historical importance and historical perspective. So, the beam what we get, this A and AD, AD is the beam. So, we have a AD quartz beam. As we all know that a typical balance what we know, that is this is one arm and this is one arm, another arm also. So, what we do, we put sample in one arm and the weight on the other. So, that basic idea we here also will follow to take this, and this is the balancing unit. So, you have a AD as the quartz arm, and the interesting thing is that we have a porcelain tube F. So, if we see this F is a typically porcelain tube. So, this F is porcelain tube, and this porcelain tube goes inside. So, where we keep the sample, because we have to have something, that means we want to see the temperature effect on that particular sample. So, this porcelain tube goes into the furnace, which is nothing but an electrically heated furnace. So, is electrically heated furnace. So, this electrically heated furnace would be useful to go for this particular measurement, and this F is therefore then connected to the sample holder or the sample, which is nothing but your G. So, this porcelain tube, so from this quartz beam F is there and this is your G. So, what we see that this particular thing, that if you have some mechanism such that we can measure this thing, and G is the sample holder, and you see that is the two wire, that is the electrical coiling is there, such that this particular part is your furnace. So, first it was developed in that way. So, furnace you just simply heat it. So, your sample will be heated and we want to see the temperature the weight change. So, if there is a weight change, that means the weight is slowly the weight is reducing. So, that can be monitored over here. So, some damping arrangement, some other damping process is over here. So, this is the entire thing, such that on the right hand side how much it is just tilting from this original position. So, that is basically monitored for your weight change. And nowadays the digital balances are introduced, and the digital balances are basically going for the corresponding modification of this thermobalance. So, historically this important thermobalance has been modified to nowadays or the modern thermobalances what we use for TGA or DTA measurements. So, in all these cases what we see that this instrument, so this is a very simple and the basic instrument, what we see is your thermobalance, and we should see something related to its corresponding instrumental factors. So, instrumental factors we should see. Those instrumental factors are very important to understand, because we are handling something where this sample G is kept inside the furnace. So, in the furnace we have seen just now that it will be electrically coiled up for the heating process. So, this instrumental factor is the corresponding furnace heating rate. So, this furnace heating rate is important, and in most of the time, even from the Honda's time, that it is in the range of 8 to 12 degrees centigrade per minute. So, we should adjust this particular rate, otherwise if we go for very fast heating, so your trace or the plot for the corresponding thermogravimetric analysis would be different. Then immediately we go for the recording chart or the chart speed, because that time we are using the recording chart. Nowadays it is directly going to the computer monitor. So, but the handling of those data points and their accumulation and ultimate the display. So, now it has been changed to the display unit. Then is dependent on the furnace atmosphere, as we have seen just now, that if it is air, we can expect that there is some oxidation of the material. So, we can have air or we can have some inert atmosphere, where we do not expect any kind of oxidation or sometimes the typical decomposition. Then the corresponding geometry or the sample holder and the furnace geometry also. So, the geometry of these materials can also play some important role, and then composition of the sample container, which is important. So, composition of the sample container, where we keep that particular sample, that means the crucible. Nowadays we use alumina crucible, sometimes we can use only aluminum crucible. So, these things, so this material, that means if we use some aluminum based crucible, alumina or aluminum metal foil, so these samples should not react with those material, otherwise there will be some other reaction which we cannot monitor and which we are not want to see for this particular process. Then these are all instrumental factors. So, after these all instrumental factors, we can have the sample characteristics. Number 2 is sample characteristics, what we can see, which is very important, because this will not change from the history old thermobalance to the modern day thermobalance, because sample we have to monitor by yourself. So, the corresponding one, the first thing is the amount. So, you have to have some optimized amount within the range of say 10 milligram we usually take for with the modern thermobalances or modern thermal analysis apparatus. So, if the amount of sample is less, what we see these staircases type of thing are very close by. So, what we should do for this and what we should do if the plot is like this, that means your wet loss is more over here and your wet loss is less depending upon the amount of sample you have taken. So, if the plot is like this, we have to increase the amount of sample to be taken, and if the plot is like this, we have to decrease the amount of sample to be utilized. So, this optimum amount is therefore important to get a reasonable, so that corresponding plot which will be in between, it is neither this or not this. So, in between plot we should get. Then in the next step of precaution, what we can see is the solubility of evolved gases what we can have, because that is a serious problem if the gas what is coming out which is soluble in the melt or the product what we are getting. So, it is basically a limitation for the process, and we should be very much careful to see that the whatever gas is coming out, suppose your calcium oxide is forming by the elimination of carbon dioxide from calcium carbonate, but if this calcium oxide is soluble in this particular gas, we get something different form, that means calcium oxide will still be there and we will not be able to see the weight change. Then we have the corresponding particle size, because we should have a good powder sample, because the corresponding decomposition temperature will decrease with the decrease in size. So, we should be very much careful about handling the powdered sample, and it should not be very coarse sample. So, coarse sample will have higher temperature. So, the decomposition temperature, which is very right one, depending upon the nature of the or the physical characteristics of the sample. Then one more important property, that is the heat of the reaction. We do not know anything about the heat of the reaction when we first do it. So, heat of reaction can also play some important role. So, it can affect the difference in sample and furnace temperature. So, we should be careful about the heat of the reaction for a particular reaction what we are monitoring. So, then the packing we should also see how closely packed within the crucible, and definitely the nature of the sample, and lastly we should have some idea about the thermal conductivity. So, you see the situation is getting much more complex for only the sample characteristics. So, all these things and all these precautions we should take, and we should know about the corresponding structure of the material, where we want to see that how the size, the packing, the nature of the thing, and the thermal conductivity, because the thermal conductivity can also change when we go for the corresponding sintering and the swelling of the sample. So, all these things will be very much required to monitor to take the corresponding right sample for all these thermal measurements. Okay. Thank you very much.